Welcome to the Cascade Connection, where our goal is to connect you with the technical information you need to use fasteners safely, reliably, and efficiently. Today we'll look at some of the most common steel fastener specifications, which cover bolts and hex cap screws that are used to assemble equipment and make repairs. As you might expect, these fasteners come in several different strength grades, and we're going to get a look at the three most common grades. Those are ASTM A307 Grade A, SAE J429 Grade 5, and SAE J429 Grade A. Let's start with the lowest strength first. The lowest strength steel fastener commonly available comes from specification ASTM A307. There are two grades of bolts in A307, grades A and B, and we'll be discussing grade A and leaving grade B for a future connection episode. ASTM A307 Grade A bolts are made from low carbon steel and they are not heat treated. They have a tensile strength of 60,000 pounds per square inch, or 60 KSI. Now when we use the words tensile strength, we mean the strength that it takes to break the fastener into two. Engineers like to use tensile strength as a design criteria, but fastener materials have other strength characteristics, such as yield strength and proof load strength, which are better criteria to use for engineering purposes. In general terms, yield strength is the force required to just barely stretch the fastener beyond the point where it will not return to its original length, and proof load strength is the strength the fastener can withstand according to the specification before any permanent stretching would take place. In another connection episode, we'll talk more about how fasteners are rated for physical properties such as strength. Like just about every graded fastener, A307A bolts are required to have a head marking, and they look like this. You'll notice it says 307A, and there's another mark there, two letters NB. Those identify the fastener manufacturer. I want to call to your attention some other interesting features of the A307 hex bolt. You'll notice when we look closely at the end that it's rather squared off. There is no chamfer there. And when we look at the underneath of the head, we'll notice that it's flat and featureless. There is no washer face. That's because ASTM A307 hex bolts are relatively crude fasteners, and they're not really meant for precision assembly. Next, let's look at SAE J429 Grade 5 bolts. Now these are actually called finished hex cap screws, and they're a more precisely made fastener than the ASTM A307 hex bolt. SAE J429 Grade 5 hex cap screws are made from medium carbon steel, which is heat treated to give a tensile strength of 120,000 pounds per square inch, or 120 KSI. That makes them twice as strong as the ASTM A307 Grade A hex bolt. Grade 5 hex cap screws give one of the best values in terms of holding strength per dollar. Grade 5 hex cap screws are also required to have a head marking, and it looks like this. You'll notice there are three radial lines, and there's also a small triangle there. That triangle identifies the manufacturer, as in Fasco. Let's take a look at some of the dimensional features of the hex cap screw that distinguish it from the hex bolt. If we look closely at the end of the fastener, the threaded end, we'll notice that it has a nice chamfer. And if we look at the underneath of the head, we'll notice also that it has a raised washer face and a very nice radius at the head-body junction. These features make this fastener more appropriate for precision assembly applications, and they provide more precision when tightening the fastener, as well as better resistance to failure at the head-body junction. The body diameter and straightness of finished hex cap screws is also more tightly controlled than for hex bolts. All of these dimensional features are precisely detailed in ASME B18.2.1, which covers a variety of externally threaded bolts and screws. We'll take a closer look at ASME B18.2.1 in a future connection episode. Finally, let's take a look at the higher strength of the three, SAE J429 Grade 8. Grade 8 hex cap screws have all the same dimensional features as Grade 5 hex cap screws. They're made from heat-treated alloy steel and have a tensile strength of 150,000 pounds per square inch, or 150 KSI. If you haven't figured it out by now, KSI is just another way to say 1,000 pounds per square inch. We'll notice with the grade 8 hex cap screw that it is required to have a head mark as well, and it's 6 radial lines, and there's the triangle there that identifies Infasco as the manufacturer. You just learned about 3 of the most common steel fastener grades: ASTM A307 with a tensile strength of 60 KSI, SAE J429 Grade 5 with a tensile strength of 120 KSI, and SAE J429 Grade 8 with a tensile strength of 150 KSI. These strength levels are slightly downgraded for fasteners of larger diameters. Now there are some commercial fasteners which have an even higher strength than Grade 8, and we'll talk about those in a future Cascade Connection episode as well. This is Carmen Vertullo for the Cascade Connection, where our goal is to connect you with the technical information you need to use fasteners safely, reliably, and efficiently.